Hello there and welcome to our latest video on Empowered Journalism's YouTube channel. You're listening to April Ryan, video editor for the website, and in this entry, two of our contributors, Madeleine, Raine and Sophie Wilson, hosted an exclusive webinar discussing the pathways into production journalism just in time for Christmas. Guiding them along the way were two prominent journalists in the field, Priscilla Ng'ethe and Elly Blake, who told us all about what is involved in production journalism, how to dip your toes into the industry, and how to stand out if you are trying to get into production journalism. This video does indeed include video footage from the live Zoom event itself, alongside questions and answers to our guests and our journalists in question. So sit back, relax, enjoy the video, and if you have any questions, as always, please do leave them in the comments. Thank you very much for listening, and here is the video.
Good. So I don't know whether you guys just want to introduce yourselves while we're waiting for the last few people to get on. I don't know who wants to go first.
I don't mind.
Yeah, you go first, I'll go after.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Ng'ethe. I'm a broadcast journalist for the BBC, currently at BBC Africa, producing for a program called The She Word, which is a women's discussions program, the first in Africa, where women just sit on a panel and discuss topics that are important to them. It can be anything from entrepreneurship to domestic violence to the environment, or even women in STEM. I'm also currently working for a radio bulletin called the Corona Minute, which is quite new. As you may know, during this pandemic, things changed really quickly. So we created a radio bulletin called the Corona Minute, which updates people across Africa, well, BBC Africa Corona Minute, which updates people across Africa about what's happening with the pandemic.
Thank you. And Elly?
Hi guys, I'm Elly. I work for Sky News. I've only started it quite recently actually. I've been in the job for about 5 months, and I work as a text producer. So in that role, I'm responsible for the majority of the information that you see on screen. So any of the straps and the rolling ticker that you see at the bottom is basically like I write all that stuff. Before that, I started out as an intern. I worked at the Daily Express, so I was doing like newspaper online, and then I moved over to the features desk, and then I got a role as a trainee reporter, and I've been working at the Daily Express, the Daily Mirror, up at the Manchester Evening News, and also as a researcher for the Pride of Britain Awards. So my role up to now has been like extremely varied. And then during the pandemic, obviously lockdown happened, and I just wanted to like take on a new challenge, and that's how I got into text producing. So it's all like very new at the moment, but looking forward to like telling you a bit more about the role, what kind of as the questions come in.
Thank you. So I guess the first sort of question we've got, it's quite topical. How has the pandemic affected your work, and what kind of adjustments have you had to make?
For me, like I touched on, starting a radio bulletin. So we have a morning, afternoon and evening bulletin on just updates on what's going on with coronavirus across Africa. Before the pandemic happened, we didn't have anything like that. And also for our TV show, we've had to put it on pause and have reruns, because our show, basically we need women to fly in. So on our panel, we have different women all the time from across Africa. So it relies heavily on flying in our guests and having them in studio. But because of the pandemic, again, we can't have too many people in the bureau, and we can't fly in, well, we couldn't for a long time fly anyone around the world, I guess. So we've had to have a lot of reruns and find creative ways of trying to do the show without actually having the women physically there. So now we're trying to see whether Skype works. We've also started Facebook Lives as well. So studio Facebook Lives, where we have people on Skype as panelists, and we just have our BBC producers or presenters in studio. So it's really changed the way we work, but because in journalism and in media, you always have to be creative. You always have to think outside the box. It's something you can't stop. So loads of ideas come from, I guess, the worst situations. So you have to grow and develop.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think for me, I've had to, as a key worker, like I have to go into the office because my job can't be done from home. So in terms of like the physical side of it, like life has kept on going in that sense. But I think for me, I think it's been more the adjustments that I've made is like when I'm not working, it really is learning to take a step back from the news, because like life at the moment is like COVID. Everything that I do every day is like, you know, very like COVID heavy, and so sometimes you don't really realize the kind of impact that has on you until you sort of take a step back. So I think for me, the adjustment which I have made is when I'm not working, like learning how to switch off, because you don't really realize until you realize like how much of an effect it has on you, like speaking about tears all the time and COVID and Christmas plans and like everything. And then when I get home, like my boyfriend's like, oh, should we watch the news? And I'm like, no. Or my mum will call me and want to talk about COVID, and I'm just like, I can't speak about this. So I think for me, it's like learning, the adjustment that I've kind of made is like mentally, like I love my job, but learning how to switch off from it in my personal life, and like making sure that I'm not always thinking about it, because otherwise you could just think off your life basically.
Yeah, thank you. Just sorry, a quick reminder that for all of our viewers, if you have any questions for either Elly or Priscilla, we've got a question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Just pop them in there and then we'll have a look at them and then we'll ask them after this. Okay, so thank you for that. So our second question is, what is one aspect of production which surprised you when you entered, and why?
I think for me, if you don't mind, I'll go first, Priscilla. It was basically, I feel like one thing that has really surprised me is like in journalism, you always have to be deadline focused. Like any job you do is going to have like some sort of like time aspect to it where you've got a deadline that you have to hit. But with producing, I think I didn't realize this until I started, and someone said it to me when I first started, is you really learn the value of like what a minute is and how long a minute can be. Because like, you know, you've got, for my job especially, I work in breaking news, so that's a big aspect of what I do. And so like, you know, you sometimes have like split seconds to like break the fact that like some big thing has happened. And so it's really like learning that actually like within a minute you can do loads, which like doesn't seem like a very long time, but actually like split seconds for me in what I do like makes like the biggest difference. Like, you know, getting there before the BBC or like our other rivals, like it makes like, you know, a few seconds earlier like makes all the difference. So I think that was one thing which has surprised me. Like I've always known about like how important deadlines are, and you will always have to work to some sort of deadline in journalism, like whether you're on the paper or online or whatever. But it's just like learning about like just how quickly things operate, and learning how to like work in that sort of environment where you do have to just operate at like a million miles an hour. So that's one thing that I've definitely learned to get to grips with.
Okay, thank you.
I'd echo what Elly has just said, but I think one thing that really surprised me about producing that I didn't know before is that how much it can vary. So from live news, like what Elly works on, and while I was a freelancer a few years ago, I used to also work on live news. A split second is literally everything. Can you guys hear me? Sorry. I think
yeah, it just went for a second, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay. And then for long form producing, you have much longer, but there's still a deadline. But also the tone, and for everything you produce, whether it's features for TV, features for radio, or documentary for radio, or live TV, you have to put on a different hat as a producer. Even though you're still a producer, you have to approach it very differently because they're different forms of storytelling. So for live news, it's very factual, quick, fast-paced, etc. For features for TV, you really have to think about what's going to keep the attention of the viewer. watching this certain feature or this certain production. And then for radio now, you have to paint the picture for the listeners because they can't see what's visually there. So you have to make them visualize what's there. So I think for me is that as one role as a producer, you can switch into so many hats because you have to think differently.
Thank you. Those are both really good ideas. Thank you. So another question we've got is actually on the gender pay gap. So I know quite a lot's been said recently, but do you guys think that enough is being done in regards to that? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think for me, I don't specifically know too much about like the gender pay gap, but one of the real reasons that I was like attracted to working at Sky is because they're really big on like equality and like inclusivity and diversity. And I think that was one of the like key reasons that I wanted to work there, was because I felt like they were sort of like leveling the playing field in that sense. So even though like I'm not like, there probably is still a way to go, definitely, I do think that they are like, media is making strides in that sense. You know, you see like a lot more women on screen, like there's a lot more diversity, and like for me, like that was like a really important part of like why I wanted to work at Sky, because I knew that they like did make a big deal out of it, like they've won awards for their diversity and things like that. So even though I'm not exactly sure on like, you know, if I'm getting paid kind of like exactly the same as a man, and I'm probably not, to be fair, but I do think like we are definitely making strides in that sense. And I think, you know, it's really important to work at somewhere that like champions that. Because I don't know, like when I worked at like the newspapers, I didn't really feel like that was as like a bigger priority as like somewhere like Sky. They make it into a priority.
I'd echo what Elly has just said. And also I think companies now are being more transparent. I think it was a year ago, 2 years ago, where we saw companies publish how much their talent's getting paid in comparison to all the rest. So with the transparency, I think companies are starting to make strides into having equal pay for not just gender, but also ethnic minorities. But there's still a way to go.
Thank you for that. And both of you've done quite a lot of different things in your career so far. So we just sort of wanted to know whether the route into producing is like more difficult or more complex than that of reporting, and like what experience you've had in those areas.
I'd say the route into producing is a little easier than the route into reporting or being on screen. And that's because there's so many things you can produce. There's so many programs you can produce for, and also it's about your ideas. So if you come with a fresh perspective, if you come with a great story that no one else has, you become the producer, you run that program, that show. Where for reporting and being on screen is quite harder because there's a scarce amount of presenters and on-screen people, so getting there, it's quite hard. You have to really show your talents, and I'd say the easiest way into getting on screen is probably by coming up with a story that only you could tell or you can report because it's so personal to you. So yeah, it's different. Getting into producing is a lot easier. You just have to come with your ideas.
Thank you.
I feel like actually there's more reporting roles out there, maybe not on-screen reporting roles, but I don't know, like if you want to work at a newspaper or online, I feel like there are a lot more reporting roles, and actually like it's not harder to get into producing, but you just don't see as many job adverts out there for like production roles. Or if you do, there's like, I came from being a reporter to going into a producer role, and for me, like my role isn't very technical in terms of like the editing and like filming and things like that. So, you know, if I used to see a producer role, I think all the technical jargon would put me off, and I'd be like, well, you know, I'm not qualified for that kind of thing. So even though I don't think either of them are like harder than the other. I think actually like you're probably, you know, if you've got a good news sense, you've got like some sort of like journalism qualification, then you're going to be equally sort of qualified. But I just, from what I remember, I didn't really, when I was looking for like jobs and stuff, I didn't really see that many producer roles out there. It was more sort of like probably get in as a reporter and then you can move over to broadcast, is how I found it.
Thank you. And I'll ask one more question before we go to the audience questions. Did you guys ever think you were going to go into producing, or did you have like a different career path in mind?
I've sort of like, so the one thing that I wanted to say, because obviously I saw some of the questions beforehand, is that I've always sort of like known what direction I want to work in, but I've never been one of these people that is like, yes, I want to do exactly this job and I know how I'm going to get there. Like I've always sort of like worked it out as I've gone along. And I think like the one really important thing that I wish someone had told me when I was sort of like starting to look at jobs and careers and things like this is, you don't have to know, I don't think. Like, you know, it's great if you've known from the age of 14, like exactly what you want to do with your life and like, you know exactly what role you want to go into and how to get there. But when I was leaving uni, I had no idea. And I started off, I worked as a consultant for 3 years in cybersecurity, which was very random. I literally got the first job I could take and then slowly worked out that actually like, oh, that job's not for me. And I maybe want to go into journalism, and started off that way. And I think it's good to know kind of what direction you want to go in, but I had no idea that I wanted to be a producer. I just saw this job come up and I wanted to go into broadcast, and it seemed like a perfect opportunity and I was a good fit. So I just think you don't need to have everything worked out, and I wish someone had kind of told me that like back at the beginning. And you know, if you work it out as you go along, then that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, you definitely don't need to have everything worked out. I kind of fell into journalism. I've always loved storytelling, and I love hearing about people's lives, experiences, what has made them the person that they are now. So storytelling is my passion. So I guess producing, journalism, anything within the media sector comes with that hand in hand. So yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet, but I did study journalism. But I was sure after studying journalism, I wasn't going to be a journalist. I was pretty sure. I was like, no. But then I ended up getting an work experience, actually not an internship, work experience at the BBC. And I just ended up loving it. After my 3-week work experience, I stayed on as a freelancer, as a research freelancer, then became a producer, started presenting things. So it just kind of naturally happened. It was a natural progression, but I always knew I loved stories and storytelling.
Thank you. So I'm going to hand over to Sophie now, who's going to ask some questions that the audience would like to know.
So the first question we have is for Priscilla. It was, what was the most difficult challenge that you faced when you launched the She Word in 2018?
The most difficult challenge. I think the most difficult challenge was finding our audience, because it was so new, it was so fresh. We kind of didn't know what was going to be the tone. Who do we target? And we're still kind of trying to figure that out as we go along. So it's still trying to find the right voices, trying to find the right faces, trying to find the right audience and people to communicate to, and also trying to get our audience to interact with us online as well. So trying to find platforms of where we can get more women across Africa to interact and then to go and watch the She Word. So I guess it's just building that platform. When something is new, you kind of don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but I'm pretty proud of what it has become. Well, very proud.
We also have a question for Elly. There was a report in the news recently saying that there was some tension between junior producers and more senior journalists. We wondered if you thought that there was a hierarchy in Sky News, or if it was equal between all workers there.
I won't speak about Sky News. I'll speak kind of more generally about the industry, if that's okay. I think there is always going to be some sort of like work politics wherever you work, but actually a lot of senior journalists are really willing to give their time and like give you advice. Like I had a really good relationship when I was at the Mirror with like the managing editor, who was also my line manager, and like they're really like able to give you advice and like happy to share their experiences with you. And also, like, if you ever ask them about what journalism used to be like in the olden days, then definitely ask those questions, because it sounds absolutely hilarious and the industry has changed a lot now. So yes, I would say there is always going to be a hierarchy of sorts. You know, some egos come into play. I think especially in like the broadcast industry, there is always going to be a bit of that, but actually, you know, if you work past that and you sort of like get past the hierarchy, like people are always willing to like share their experiences, share their knowledge, tell you about like how things work, and actually like you can learn a lot from it. So you just have to sort of get past the hierarchy and sort of like work within it maybe.
Thank you. We have a question about what opportunities people can get in journalism during COVID-19 and what you'd encourage them to be doing now if there aren't the same internships and things like that.
I'd say keep an eye on websites such as the Sky website, BBC website, ITV website. There's always internships and apprenticeships that are going. I think now they may have slowed it down, but I do predict within probably the next 6 months, they'll probably start posting them up again. So definitely keep an eye on that. And I'd say work on your craft as well in your own spare time. So if you have a blog, write about, I don't know, have opinions blog, maybe you like watching films, maybe you're interested in current affairs, have a blog or even a YouTube channel, just something where you're productive and you are still working on your craft so that you have something to show later on.
Yeah, I definitely would echo that as well. I think even though, like, you know, you could be writing a blog and you're like, you know, I've only got 3 views, or like I did a YouTube channel and like no, like, you know, I made a video and nobody's watched it, TikTok, etc. Like it doesn't matter. Even like sometimes you can feel like you're just screaming into the dark kind of thing, and it can feel a bit deflating, but you just need to keep putting yourself out there. Like there are definitely internships around, so, but they are a bit more few and far between. So I'd say like keep a blog, you know, people want to see that you're like a commentator, you know, be keen on Twitter, make sure that you're like keeping on, like staying up to date, kind of putting your opinion out there, and like, as you say, Priscilla, like honing your craft, which is really important. Also, I think for me, like I will get in touch with people that I really admire on Twitter, and I'll be like, oh, it'd be, you know, lovely to have a phone call with you, you know, introduce myself, and I'll kind of like network in that sense. I had a really good chat with this like anchor from Bloomberg before I got into journalism. I'm not in journalism, before I got into my new role. And I was like asking him for advice on how to get into broadcast, and, you know, just even just having that conversation, like it just, sometimes you just need it because it's a bit more uplifting, because sometimes it is really difficult. So I think, you know, networking, you'll still be networking, make sure you keep your like blog up to date and things like that. I think they're all really important things that show that you're keen and you're on it basically to employers.
Thank you. You touched on it a bit there, but somebody has asked how you use social media to further your career. I know you talked a bit about Twitter then, but I don't know if there's any other platforms that you suggest people use.
For me, my like Instagram and my Facebook, I just want to keep private, to be honest. So I don't really use them. Like Twitter is my thing, I'd say, for like professionalism, and like LinkedIn, but I don't use it that much. So I think I would say, like, for me, Twitter's the one that I just use. I'll make sure that I'm commenting on things. Like sometimes it can feel a bit like contrite the way like I do things, because I'm like making sure that I'm commenting on stuff all the time, and like, you know, it's not like, sometimes it feels a bit like a McKean bean basically, but just like to keep showing that you're like a commentator, you're talking about things, you're interested in things. Like I kind of use Twitter for that, whereas like my Instagram and my Facebook are more like my private, like friends, social life stuff. So I try and keep them very separate.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Have platforms where it's just private and it's for you and it's more for your friends and family. But Twitter is a good one for journalism or producing or your career. Also LinkedIn. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn, put up all the things you've done, the work experience you've had, maybe some videos you've created or some blogs you've written or articles you've written. So LinkedIn is a really, really good one. And that's usually where I get in contact with people as well, professionally.
Thank you. This is a question for both of you. Somebody said, was there anything in particular that you felt made you stand out as a candidate when applying for your roles?
For my role. I think for me, it's the fact that I was familiar with the BBC because I had been freelancing for 2 years prior to applying for the role. So I was familiar with producing, working on live TV. I had gained the experience basically. And also the fact that my background is, my parents are from Kenya. So to go and work for a Pan-African women's discussions program, I have the cultural experience, can I say? I know a lot about my heritage. I know a lot about other people's heritage as well, because living in London, I was born and raised in London. I came across a lot of different people from different countries across Africa. So also I was Pan-African. So I think that was my unique selling point.
That's a very good question. It's really tough to answer, to be honest, because it's quite, I felt when I was going for my role as a text producer, like I kind of would read the job description and I could see like, you know, they're looking for attention to detail. A part of my training, I was a sub-editor at the Daily Mirror. So I was like, yeah, I've got that. Working well under pressure, like journalism is pressure basically. So I was like, yes, I can do that. Like I've been to, you know, worked in very pressurized environments like inquests and things. So I think, you know, you've got to sort of be realistic when you're like looking at a job description and be like, okay, yeah, how can I show that I fit these sort of things that they're looking for? But I mean, I think, so, you know, you kind of like have to have that as like the baseline. And then I think maybe to show that you stand out, like you just have to show that you've got like a, you know, bit about you. Like for me, like I've been traveling and I felt like for me, like that really grounded me. It made me like a very independent person. And so, you know, I'll speak about that. I'll speak about kind of things, you know, obviously like how what I've done in journalism fits what they're talking about, but then I'll try and add kind of like how things I've done outside of journalism have also helped me to kind of fit the role that they're looking for. So I think you just sort of got to have like that extra thing, which is like, you can't really put your finger on it or say what it is, but like you'll sort of know kind of when you're looking at the job description and like how you can bring in things that you've done in your personal life or your social life to like, you know, show that you're going to be a good fit for the company and things like that. So just not talking just about sort of like work experience, it's kind of like your personal experience, making sure like you're a good kind of match to the culture, I think is a good one.
That's really helpful, thank you. We have another question that says, as hard as this ongoing pandemic has been, do you think it has helped change producing in a positive way? So have there been new techniques found and ways of storytelling that you will continue to use in the future?
I think there's been a few changes, which you can say it's in a positive way as well, like the way we're using Skype a lot more, Zoom a lot more, and even for like live interviews, the way we've come up with new ideas for programs such as the Corona Minute or Africa Corona Minute. I just think the pandemic has really made people think on their toes and think on their feet about different areas and ideas that you can bring to your department or to a certain genre. So I think the creativity aspect has been good because it's made us move out of the traditional way of reporting, the traditional way of doing things, and use more creativity. Like even our Facebook Lives we have in studio. Before, we never had any studio recording as a Facebook Live or Instagram Live. But now that's like the new hip thing to do. And also coronavirus kind of forced us to do that. So what I think the positive outcome is that we've moved out of our traditional ways and we've become more creative.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. I think, as you say, like before the pandemic, like if you wanted to, I don't know, like get a person onto the show, you'd have to physically be there. And, you know, that would mean that like a lot of people wouldn't be able to do it because of all these logistical reasons. So you might be limiting yourself quite a lot. Whereas now, like, you know, we're all speaking to each other virtually. Whereas before, you know, we might have all had to meet up and not everyone could do it because, you know, Priscilla's in Nairobi kind of thing. And like it gives you a lot more freedom, so to be able to, like, you know, speak to people who otherwise might not be able to be there.
I think it's really important that we think about the positives in such horrible times, but those are really good answers, thank you. Have you ever had a confidence setback within your careers, and if so, how did you overcome it?
Sorry, repeat that.
Have you ever had a confidence setback within your careers, and if so, how did you overcome it?
I think the thing with journalism or being a producer is that you're going to have to get used to hearing the word no because it's heavily reliant on your creativity, and your creativity is, someone might like it, an editor might like it, someone might not like it, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. So to go into the industry, to be a producer or a journalist, you really have to grow thick skin and know that when you hear no, you're going to hear a yes. And let that no make you more resilient, because it's an industry of no's and it's also an industry of yeses. So people just have to be resilient and just know that if you know your work is good, it's good, but it's like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's how some of your ideas are within the industry. It might work, it might not work for one editor or the other.
I would definitely echo that. Like I have had when I started journalism, it was a really bumpy start, to be honest. And I'm a very sensitive person. So as you say, like, yes, it is an industry full of no's. And sometimes I was like, you know, all everyone says to me is no. And it can feel very depressing. But as you say, like now, from what I was like when I first joined the industry to what I am like now, I have definitely like grown a thick skin. Like I used to take things very personally, whereas, you know, now, you know, I still would maybe get upset by it, but I wouldn't be taking it as personally. I think you're always going to come across setbacks, especially being a young journalist. It is a tough industry. Like when I first got into journalism, a lot of my friends said to me, like, you know, you're getting into like one of the hardest industries. And I was like, oh no, it's not that bad. Like you're in finance, you're in law, like it's not going to be worse than that. And then learn very quickly that it is really difficult. Like one time an editor said to me when I was an intern that they would never give me a job because I didn't have a journalism degree. And I just said, like, I was really upset by it when they said it to me, but I just thought like, nah, I'm not taking that. Like, and ended up getting the company to pay for my NCTJ. So you do learn to sort of like, you know, take things, but don't take it personally. As you say, like turn a no into a yes. You know, if you say you're not going to give me a job because I haven't got this, like go out and get it kind of thing, and prove people wrong. Because kind of looking back to my early days, I've received a lot of sort of like negative feedback and I've sort of like proved them all wrong. And so you've just got to know your worth and just say like, you say this, but I'm not taking that. You say I can't work in this industry, I say I can, kind of thing. And you just got to, sometimes it can feel really hard and sometimes you do just want to give up, but you just got to know that like this is what I want to do, and I'm not going to let anyone else make me feel like I can't do it. So, you know, within reason, obviously.
It can be cutthroat. You just have to be resilient and just know that you're good.
Yeah,
Having a
resilient.
mentor, yeah, and having a mentor is a really good idea as well, because they can see things from the outside. So they'll let you know whether the idea that you gave in does need a lot more work, or whether, you know, maybe you should pitch it to someone else, or maybe you should develop it in this way. And also they can reassure you that you're doing well, because sometimes all you need is reassurance.
I was going to say, like, communication. So, you know, if you kind of pitch an idea to an editor and they're like, oh, I don't know about that, say, okay, that's fine, but like, how would you do it then to make it work? So making sure, because sometimes, you know, you just hear a no and it's easy to just be like, oh, they said no, and then leave it. But then be like, okay, so what would you do differently that would make it like a better piece, or would give it more weight, kind of thing? And then, you know, communicating with them, because yeah, they've got all the experience, they've been in this industry for years. So and you know, you're the new person that's pitching an idea and might not like know about like different things, you know, how things work. So definitely making sure like you ask for feedback, and communication, I'd say, is very important.
I'm just going to grab my charger, my battery's about to die.
No worries. I'll ask a question to Elly then, in that case. It's about your degree. So how do you get yourself accepted for internships and early jobs when you don't have a journalism degree to show that you have the passion for it?
Okay, that is a good question. So when I first started, as I say, I've studied politics at uni. Never knew I wanted to go into journalism. I worked as a cybersecurity consultant for 3 years, and then thought, pack it all in, it's not really for me. Went traveling, and during that time, that's when I started to think, oh, I want to get into journalism. So when I got back, I emailed Condé Nast Traveller magazine, because I was like, oh, you know, I've just been traveling, I want to get into journalism, you know, I'm interested in travel, you know. And then I managed to get a few weeks work experience there. And then after that, like, nothing. So that ended, and I was like, okay, what next? And I'd be emailing like all these different places and never hear anything back. And it got to the point where I was like, for God's sakes, I'm just gonna have to ring, because nobody's replying to me. So I'm gonna have to start calling, which is horrible. But so I was calling all these places, not really. Again, can you send an email? You just got to be persistent, because then I rang up the Daily Express, and they were like, oh, I'm really sorry, but we can't give you work experience, because like something to do with like they'd have to pay me. But they were like, but actually we have a job interview going, and it's today, so would you mind coming in for the interview? It's like a group interview. And it was like at 10 o'clock I called, and the interview was at 2. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll just come. Haven't done any prep. And it just so happened that the job was a travel journalism job. So it was like to be a travel intern on the travel desk. And I was like, this is really weird, but this is like fate. This is me. And I ended up getting the job, which I think obviously all the other candidates who've done like a lot more research were like really annoyed about. But I would say, like, it seemed like to me it was luck that got me that job, but actually it wasn't luck. It was me picking up the phone and calling. So I would say, like, it's really horrible to have to do, but you've got to be very persistent, and you've sort of got to like do the thing that a lot of other people don't really want to do, which is like that phone call. So it is difficult to get that experience, and I would say, like, you know, it feels like I fell into the job, but actually looking back, I was very proactive. And because of the fact that, you know, emailing wasn't work, everyone emails, not many people ring. So kind of making sure that you set yourself apart, really, and basically pick up the phone, which I hate, but I definitely recommend it.
Thank you. And then we have a question about doing a journalism course as well. So for Priscilla, we have someone who's in the final year of their BA journalism course. How did you kickstart your career once finishing your studies? They're worried that due to the current situation, it's been hard to get experience this year while studying.
So what I did was I applied for work experience at the BBC, BBC Radio Current Affairs, and it was a 3-week work experience. So I actually got it through, I think it was the NCTJ, if I'm not wrong. They had advertised different internships and work experience that people could get while they're studying the course and studying for university. So that's how I managed to get in. But one thing I'd say that the reason why I stood out is because I used to also write for the university's paper. I used to be the assistant opinions editor. And also I was actively writing for a blog as well. And I used to present a radio program at university as well. So I was really proactive. And these things helped me stand out. So that's why I put so much emphasis on having other things outside of work experience or professional experience that you do that shows that you're actually passionate about something.
Thank you. Some questions about your jobs now. Do you feel that your work is varied, and is there much opportunity and mobility in the industry?
I'd say that in terms of what my role is, like every day I sort of, the content of what I'm writing is very varied, but the job itself is like, there's a very set format to what I do. But I felt maybe during when I was like a reporter in the newspaper industry, there wasn't that much opportunity. You do find people that are in that role for about like 20 years, like, you know, and the way to kind of get up is for someone to retire. Like, so I kind of felt like the newspaper industry was a bit more stagnant in terms of opportunity. But at Sky and in broadcast, I do feel like there is a lot of opportunity, and that like people do speak about, like, you know, if you're interested in something, you need to get involved. Like, you know, you should ask to be involved with things, and people want you to get involved. And there is a lot more opportunity, I'd say, in terms of, I don't know, like the election, that's like the US election, like you can get involved in that because they always need like extra hands on deck. It's like a very big operation, and you know, if you've got an interest in that, like they want to hear from you. Like, so I do think there definitely is opportunity, and like you can make your own opportunity as well. Like, you don't always, I don't know, within work you might not feel like you have, you know, I don't know, you've got like limitations, but you can always go out and do your own thing. Like, I was volunteering for a community radio station because I was really interested in like radio. So you can always just make your own opportunity as well.
I think within my role, it does vary because of the nature of the program I work on, well, the two programs I work on. Every week is a different topic. There's different pitches. Sometimes I'm on screen, sometimes I'm behind, sometimes I'm in the gallery. Sometimes I'm actually on location looking for a story. So it does vary. And also the good thing about the BBC is that you can apply for attachments onto different programs. So usually people will be from the business department and apply for attachment for current affairs, or like live current affairs, or the health team or something. So yeah, it does vary, and there is a lot of opportunities within BBCs to kind of grow and to move and maneuver around.
That's really great to hear. We have a question from somebody. They're from Pakistan, where they worked as a journalist for 2 years, but are currently doing the MA in multimedia journalism here in the UK. How should they go about applying for internships?
Sorry, repeat that?
We have someone from the audience who's from Pakistan, where they worked as a journalist for 2 years. They're currently doing their MA in multimedia journalism here in the UK. How should they go about applying for internships?
I think you just have to keep applying. You literally have to keep applying and just go on your strengths. His strength seems like he's had international experience. So I'm guessing he worked for 2 years in Pakistan as a journalist. I don't know whether that's true or false, but use that as your selling point. You have international experience. I'm not sure whether you have something specifically you're interested in, maybe business, maybe economics or current affairs. If you're interested in something, also show that within your application. And I'd say keep applying. It can be a bit disheartening when you hear no. But if you keep applying, keep knocking on the doors, the door will open and you'll get your foot in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would say making sure you follow like I follow the Media Mentor on Twitter. They are always every day. There's like job boards, Media Beans as well as a really good one. Gorkana, like so making sure that you're looking at all the kind of major job boards because internships do definitely come up. Kind of knowing around the times that they come up as well. So I know that the BBC one opens at a very specific time of the year and closes because of like I don't know how it works. So maybe I like journal resources as well is also very good. It kind of like tells you when these things run. So like knowing kind of roughly when to look, like when to expect them to like drop on job boards. Also like LinkedIn, making sure you're kind of networking with people over social media. You know, word of mouth works really well. It's kind of frightening how well it works in this industry. Kind of always kind of knowing kind of people is great, and a lot of jobs or opportunities do still come up like that. You know, and also like I don't think it's like a term of like you have to be like really well connected, or you know you have to know like your parents know someone really famous or any of this stuff. It is just like you can go out and make those connections yourself, and it doesn't have to be like exclusive, like an exclusive sort of like industry in that sense. You can make sure that you're like making these networks, introducing yourself to people. Like how I say sometimes I'll just like direct message someone that I admire on Twitter and be like, hey, it'd be really nice to introduce myself. I think that's really important. And yeah, as you said, Priscilla, actually I thought it was interesting that you said that making sure you play on your strengths. Like this person sounds like they've had this international experience. For a lot of broadcasters or like companies, that's going to be a really big selling point. So making sure you know you have your little niche. Mine was that I've done a lot of traveling, so I feel like you know I've culturally got to know a lot of places. Like I'll make sure I bring that kind of stuff up when I'm applying, and people will want to know about it.
And also use the resources at university. So there's usually a careers advisor, and usually your university departments will have, I don't know, internships or work experience that they've probably put together and they know about that they'll give to their students. So I'd say use the resources at uni as well. And also don't be afraid to ask for days of shadowing. It might not be work experience, but it could be a way of getting in. If you go and shadow for a day or two, you can make your contacts then. You might not know anyone just yet, but once you shadow, you'll create contacts and know new people. So that's also another way in.
When you message journalists to network, how quickly do you ask for a Zoom coffee or a talk like that? Do you need to build up a relationship with them first?
I think it kind of depends, to be honest. So the guy that I spoke about from Bloomberg, I literally just I'd spoken to him before because I kind of been introduced to him through my NCTJ, so I'd kind of had an initial contact, but it was never anything like, it was like just like an email about like he was talking about a job. And then I just messaged him on LinkedIn and I was like, hi, I hope you're well. You know, I'd really like to pick your brain, to be honest, because I've been thinking about getting into the broadcast industry. So, I mean, that was kind of like instantaneous. But with other people, I would say like I've sort of like, I don't know, like I'll just sort of, they'll write us like a tweet or whatever and I'll like comment on it like a few times. So like, and then eventually kind of like get into a conversation that way. So it just, it's sort of like kind of whatever feels natural to you. Like some people like it kind of turns into more of like a friendship rather than like, I don't know, like I'm picking your brains, but some people it doesn't. So it just kind of like go with the situation really. Like it varies from person to person.
Yeah, I'd say make it natural, conversational. One thing I would say not to do is to kind of just approach them like, hi, I want work experience. Do you know what I mean? Because that's a bit, okay, who are you? What are you passionate about? You know, why me? So kind of, if you're approaching someone, let it be known who you are. If you're studying, if you want to pick their brains, what you admire about that specific person while you're reaching out to them, and also what you want to do in future. Because journalists are still humans, we have feelings.
How is your job in terms of the work-life balance? Do you think that work can sometimes start to take over and you have to take a step back, or is it quite easy to regulate between the two?
I think there are seasons where work can really take over. And then there are seasons where you have a bit more of a balance. I'd say when I was a freelancer, I had less work-life balance, but that's because I was working across a number of departments. So I was taking on quite a lot, so my weeks were really full. Where now, because I'm staff, I work on 2 programs currently, but there's still a bit more of a balance because you have a team, you know exactly what the flow is, and you know exactly what your day-to-day duties are.
I say for me, I work quite long hours, and sometimes if I work the weekend, I might get like my 2 days off, but they're not together. So you're having a day off and then going into work and then another day off. So you don't sometimes you don't feel like you have that break that you need that you get from the weekend. So I'd say sometimes work does feel like it takes over, but I now have learned how to switch off. So when I'm not working, I'm not watching the news. To be honest, if I'm gonna watch anything on like TV, it would be like a reality TV program, just something that I can turn off, don't have to think about it. Because I don't know, like Twitter as well, I use Twitter a lot in my free time, but trying like to steer away from these sort of like work kind of conversations and like the news. I basically, in my time off, I just avoid the news. I was in the taxi on the way to work yesterday, and the guy was playing the radio. He was like, "Oh, do you want anything specific on?" And I was like, "Just not the news, please. I'm going to be doing it all day. I literally just want to hear some music." Like, so it is just making sure you do turn off and have that kind of freedom away from it, because it is all consuming otherwise. And you're taking on a lot of these, I don't know, like a no-deal Brexit or the economic state of the country. Like I sometimes feel like I take that on my shoulders and I really feel it, and it can be very depressing. So I have to make sure that when I'm not working, I am like just switched off from it, basically.
Thank you. In terms of producing live interviews with key people in the news, how do you squeeze the most interesting aspects of a story from an interviewee?
I'll give that to Elly because I haven't worked in live news for a while.
That's a good question. I don't do that much interviewing anymore, but I would say like from, I don't know, watching the sort of the people who have got like, I don't know, like Emily Maitlis, like all these people that have they're very good interviewers. It's asking very unexpected questions that you didn't really know. So I don't know, like if you've got an interview with someone, you'll probably have an idea of what you're going to ask them. Like they'll be coming in probably, when the government ministers come on every day, it's usually to talk about some sort of like PR propaganda thing. They've got this like new initiative that they're going to announce. So you sort of have to mention that because that's the reason why they've come on. But it is asking the questions that they didn't really expect you to ask. And it's sort of not tripping them up, but you know, like when they come on to speak about something, they're going to know exactly what they're going to say. They're going to have it really rehearsed, and it's asking the questions, I would say, that they haven't got the rehearsed answer to. You've got to think on your feet, and that's probably when you're going to get your news line from it.
Thank you. In terms of getting into TV and radio, how is best to get into freelancing for that rather than writing your articles?
The best way to get into freelancing is through internships. It's through work experience or through making contacts, networking, finding out where there's gaps, where there's opportunities. I'd say putting yourself out there. It's quite scary. When I first started putting myself out there, it was quite crippling because I'm an introvert at heart. But I realized in this industry, you have to be a bit more extroverted and put yourself out there, give your ideas, pitch a lot, talk to people you may have never thought you'd be speaking to before, but you have to do it with confidence.
Thank you.
Sorry. No, all I was going to say is I haven't freelanced all, but I'd say if you were sort of like thinking about radio and you haven't got any radio experience, like find a community radio station and volunteer for a little bit, because even though, you know, you're not going to be paid for it and you're giving up your free time, like that is a great thing to have on your CV, especially volunteering, because it just shows that you've got passion outside of, you know, I'm being paid for this is a job to me. And it's sad, but it is a lot easier to kind of get these experiences because you're giving up your time and you're not being paid for it. So making sure, like, there are loads of like things that you can do out there where it's volunteering but you're still getting something back from it.
Thank you. If you had to name one standout point of your career, what would it be?
Oh, do you want the good version or the bad version? One thing actually, which I'll say the funny one and then I'll say the real one, but making sure that you know where you're going, okay? Because I once I got sent to court and I didn't know which court I was going to, and I went to the wrong court, which was very embarrassing, and then had to explain to my editor why I didn't get the piece. Making sure you always know where you're going is very important. I don't know why, but that's just a standout because I was such an idiot. But I feel like a big standout for me was when I worked on the Pride of Britain Awards. So that it's run by the Daily Mirror and in conjunction with ITV, and I was a researcher for it. So I basically had to kind of find people who were eventually going to go on to be the winners. And it was just very different. I'll probably never get an experience like that again, because it's like an entertainment program, obviously has a journalism aspect to it, and you just meet some really amazing people and hear some really nice stories that make you cry a lot, to be honest.
That's lovely. My internet cut out for the beginning of your story.
I was saying that I went to the wrong court and it was very embarrassing because I got to the Court of Appeal instead of going to the Crown Court, and I'm here for this murder case, and they were like, murder case? We don't do any stuff like that here. And I was like, yeah, it's this one. And they were like, which court do you think you're at? And then I had to take a half-an-hour walk to the other one. It was very embarrassing.
I'd say mine was the first documentary I had ever done. It was based on my great-grandmother, and she was 117, and we were celebrating her birthday. And so that was, I guess, the biggest thing I've done within my career, because it was very sentimental to me. And also I found out a lot more about myself, my heritage, the family I'm from. And also it was just a feel-good piece. And it was broadcasted across the world on BBC News. So that's one part that has really stood out for me.
They're both really lovely stories. I think we just have time for one more. And to finish off, I just wanted to ask, if you had one piece of advice to give to the aspiring journalists, what would it be?
That's a very good question. I'll let you go first, Priscilla, if you want. That's a very good question.
It's a very good question. One piece of advice. There's so many that you can give. But I think the one main piece I'd give is what I said before, is that you're going to hear no a lot within this industry. But do not take that to heart. Do not be disheartened by that, and keep going and be resilient. Just know that what you're doing it for a reason. You're in the career for a reason. You want to be a journalist for a reason, because you're passionate about telling stories and you're passionate about what you do. So just keep going, keep knocking on doors, keep trying to get your foot in, and keep getting back up.
I 100% wholeheartedly agree with you. I'd say my number one advice would be don't give up, because sometimes it can be tough, especially when you start. And sometimes, you know, it feels hard getting into the industry, and once you're in the industry but you're so junior and you keep kind of, as you say, hearing no's, it's very disheartening. But don't give up, because it does get a lot better. So yeah, trying to grow that thick skin kind of early on is really important. And also I think also one really exciting thing is we're all kind of at the beginning of our careers, and it is like you do have, you're not kind of like 10 years into it and kind of know what you're doing. Having the opportunity to try new things. So I don't know, you might think, oh, well, I'd love to go and work online for a bit, or I'd love to go and work in on the paper side of things, see what that's like. Sports, going to court, like all these new things, like these are all really exciting things that you have to look forward to. And so it's like making sure that you do, just like if someone's got an opportunity to go and do something and you've never done it before, do go and do it. Because I know going to court is really scary. I was terrified when I went to my first inquest, but the reason you go into journalism is because it's fun and exciting and varied. So make sure that you do sort of enjoy these opportunities and try new things, I'd say is a very key piece of advice.
Thank you so much for all of your answers to the questions. It's been really insightful and really helpful to everyone that's listening. I'm just going to pass to Maddie now.
Yes, I'm just going to reiterate what Sophie said, just like to thank you both for coming. And all of our attendees as well. You've given some really insightful things that I'm sure everyone will take away with them. We'd just like to say as well, we've got some more workshops coming up. We've got one with Mariana Spring next week, and we've got a couple coming up in January. So just keep an eye out for those. I think that's it. If you guys wanted to say anything else, or we can wrap up.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I was just going to say, if anyone has any kind of follow-up questions, you're always welcome to message me on Twitter or LinkedIn or anything like that. I'm always happy to kind of help and give any advice. So thank you so much for having me.
If you have reached this point of our video, you've come to the end. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and we hope you've benefited greatly from it. If you have any burning questions that come to mind following this talk, please feel free to contact them on Twitter. Their handles can be found in the description below. Also, feel free to check out Empoword Journalism's website, our Facebook page, Twitter and Instagram. If you want to get involved, please do come and get in contact with us. Thank you very much once again for joining us, and we hope you stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye.